Hello, everyone, and welcome to another weekly energy forecast. So, in these sessions, we have a look at the astrological energy of the week, the moon phase that we're in, and also the energy of the season, and how these all layer on top of each other to create our experience of the week. So, Mars is finally stationing direct as of today, and we have a very, very big dynamic week ahead of us with lots of different layers to the energy. So, we've got a new beginning with the new moon that wraps up the winter season. It's the final new moon of the winter season, so it's really a good opportunity to start wrapping things up. It's also in the final sign of the zodiac, so we've got that Pisces new moon coming up in the middle of the week. Mars stationed direct today. Venus is going to be stationed retrograde at the end of the week. So we've got things moving forward and then things going into a period of review at the same time in different areas of your chart, in different areas of your life. We've got Mercury doing a whole bunch of stuff this week. Mercury is currently transiting through Pisces. It's been there for about a week or so, maybe a bit longer. Um, and it is moving on through, making a conjunction to all of the planets that are like the pile of planets that we have in Pisces at the moment. So Mercury is the mind, the planet of communication, and it making different conjunctions with different planets throughout this week. It kind of gives moments of clarity, moments of like opportunities for long-term planning, but also some haziness as well. So there's going to be moments where things feel clear and focused and on track, and other moments where things are just like really hazy and confusing, or maybe you can't quite see things clearly. If that's what you're experiencing, don't worry. It's just the energy. Mercury is heading on over into Aries pretty soon, and then that tone will shift a little bit. It's just going to be this week where things might feel a little bit muddy and unclear. Um, and then below all of this, as I mention every week, and I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Below all this, we're still in the winter season, especially because the shoots are starting to show. I've had a couple of beautiful sunny days. Like energy feels like it's stirring, picking up, moving forward. Um, it is still so important to keep nourishing, keep laying that foundation, and not leap off the starting blocks too soon, so we have the energy to see things through. Especially with Mars stationing direct now, there's going to be a sense. I mean, it's stationing direct, so it's been moving backwards for a while. When a planet stations direct, it slows down, it stops, and then it moves off pretty slowly as it moves into the opposite direction. So, like, it's not like things are going to kick up really quickly, but energy is starting to build and momentum is starting to build now. And if we're not nourished, if we don't have that strong foundation of like being very, very well cared for, if we're not restored, if we're not stagnant, then we're going to be able to enter the spring really, really effectively. But if we're jumping off those starting blocks too soon, diving headfirst, pushing forward before it's time, this it is really, really important that we acquire that energy literacy and really pay attention to when the right time to move forward is, as opposed to um yeah, I guess like going against yourself and not picking up on the subtleties. So again, it's all about becoming your own energy reader, but it is really, really important to bear in mind when there's lots of dynamic stuff happening. It can be easy to get swept up in one thing, but not be listening to the undercurrent, which actually is still vitally important. So again, even if you are feeling energized, even if you are taking action, even if you feel like it's right for you to leap in and like start driving things forward, make sure you have a strong foundation of self-care, of nourishment, maybe more so than you would usually. Still keep stocking up on those root veggies, still be, getting your meditation practice in, extra rest time, self-care, all of those bits will really, really help maintain that strong foundation as we move towards the equinox. Okay, so let's get into it. There's quite a bit to get through today. So Mars is stationing direct today. It's stationed direct about 2 o'clock this morning at 17 degrees of Cancer, and it's going to be hanging out here for a little while. It's already been here for a little while. So Mars, as I've mentioned in many, many of these updates over the last few weeks, has been retrograde, moving backwards in the sky since the 6th of December. Retrograde periods of Mars happen once every 2 years. And it can be difficult to get things going, particularly if you have a day chart, you may have found this harder. So if the sun was above the horizon at the time of your birth, Mars is a slightly more challenging planet for you. So if you have a day chart, if you have Cancer rising or Aries or Scorpio rising, this has probably been affecting you a bit more personally. However, Mars retrogrades do happen to influence everyone on a big scale. So Mars is our physical drive. It's how we take action in the world. It's how we move. It gives us the energy to do, right? So when a planet is retrograde, its significations kind of become a bit inverted. So Mars is not happy in Cancer as well. It's probably it's Mars is it's the sign of Mars's fall, so it's not very happy there anyway. So this has been a bit of a period of stickiness, of maybe passive aggressiveness, maybe a bit of heat, bit of tension. Mars in Cancer can be very protective, a bit too protective, maybe a bit fierce. Or it can just be like low energy, things feeling icky, not quite being able to get things going, but not understanding why, and maybe judging yourself or applying too much meaning to the fact that you haven't been able to get things going. So the the direct station is a period of time where everything kind of stops and we're just about to move forward. So Mars is now going to slowly take off from this station and it will gather speed as it moves forward throughout the zodiac. So it won't be out of Cancer until about the end of April, I think. So we still have a little way to go. Mars is going to travel over those degrees that it's retrograded back over. So we're going to have a sense of momentum. Whatever dust Mars has kicked up over the last few months, we're then going to kind of come back over it now and clear things up, get clarity. We're going to be able to move things forward and move on. So this is significant, and hopefully will be a bit of a tone shift. It's also, if you're going to if you're feeling that kind of sense of things starting to build with spring, it's probably also this Mars station. So if you're feeling it more than other years, just bear in mind that that's probably because that Mars is kind of coming out of that retrograde and moving forward now as well. So even like that burst forward we usually get with spring energy, which we'll have every year no matter what, layered on top of this Mars station makes it extra potent and extra powerful now. But again, Mars can be hot-headed. Mars doesn't think things through. Mars just likes to act. So just be aware of that. Every energy has a potential out of balance and imbalance manifestation of how it can play out. So, not thinking jumping off the starting blocks too soon, very Mars, like very Martian thing to do. So just be mindful of that. Um, okay, so moving on. So Tuesday, the 25th of February, this week, we have Mercury in Pisces conjunct Saturn in Pisces. So that's when two planets come together. They're at the same degree point, and then it's almost like a merging of their significations. And this is happening at 20 degrees of Pisces. So it's a good day for getting realistic about plans. Saturn is realism. Saturn brings concrete actions. Saturn in Pisces, you know, not as clear a cut as it would usually be in like Capricorn or Aquarius. However, Saturn in Pisces, it brings structure and it can bring structure to the intangible. That's why, like Saturn in Pisces significations can be like bringing a structured discipline practice to something like spirituality or religion. So having Mercury conjunct Saturn in Pisces, like Saturn's bringing the realism and Mercury is bringing the ability to think clearly and make the plans, write them down, actually take the action. Again, Mercury doesn't love being in Pisces either, so there is potential for it to be hazy. However, it could also be very, very creative as well. But Pisces is a very, very creative sign. And if you've got the planet of the mind and communication and the planet of planning, then you could potentially be connected with possibilities you never would have been open to otherwise. So again, potential positive manifestations, potential negative manifestations, pay attention to how you're feeling and how you're receiving this energy. This can also be words that have consequences, not so much in a tense aspect. So I'm not super worried about this, but maybe just be mindful of what you're saying over the next few days. Mercury is going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff this week and changing tone depending on what planet it's interacting with. So just be mindful of, maybe not thinking through things through before you say them. So yeah, so the two planets together, realism and then clarity of mind could bring hazy, creative, dreamy, intangible Pisces energy. So again, a great day with potential to bring tangibility to dreams because Saturn wants the real plan, Pisces wants to dream, but actually Saturn's going to ground that and make it a reality. Like what steps are you going to take? Again, though, can also haze and confuse. So whatever you're experiencing is right for you. Just go with it. Notice, pay attention. Are you being overly idealistic? Really check in with that because Saturn's there. Saturn's going to give you that reality check anyway. So lean on that Saturn energy to be like, am I being realistic here? Or am I kind of just letting myself run away with the fairies and not actually bringing any concrete steps to that? That's Tuesday and the day before, day after. Great time for planning. Um, Okay, moving on. So Thursday, the 25th of February, we've got Mars, Mercury in Pisces, sextiling Uranus and Taurus. Quite a nice transit. So after it's kind of gone and done the long-term planning, Mercury's then going to move on and make a sextile to Uranus. So that's sudden realizations. It can be, it's the planet of the awakener. It disrupts, it enlightens. And Mercury is the mind and how we communicate. So I feel like the Saturn stuff is like, let's make the plans, let's get clear. What are the concrete steps? Then Mercury's going to move on and be like, oh my God, I knew this was a good idea. This is the thing, right? So there might be a moment of clarity that kind of comes after the planning. Watch for that because it's important. Um, then moving on from that, we then have on Friday, the 28th of February at quarter to 1 in the morning, UK time, we have the new moon in Pisces at 9 degrees. That is going to be squaring Jupiter in Gemini. So there's a nice flavor to this new moon. We've got we've got Mercury and Pisces there as well. We've also got Saturn, which is kind of bringing some groundedness. However, with the square to Jupiter, there could be potential for kind of maybe being overly optimistic. Jupiter is the planet of optimism. And with it being a tense aspect, there could potentially be like some tension there, like setting some realistic long-term goals and then a little bit of tension between like over dreaming again. So this is very much a theme this week. It's a good time to set some intentions before this unstable energy of eclipse season. So this is the last lunation we have before eclipse season kicks in, and then that won't be over until like mid-May or something like that. So this is an important day. It's definitely something to be mindful of. We like Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. So when we have a new moon in Pisces, it's like a new beginning, but it's also an ending. It's also the last trimester of the winter season before we then move into spring. So there's a real sense of, even though this is a new moon and it's a new beginning, it's almost like this sense of wrapping things up, like what's coming to a conclusion, what can we reflect on over the last year and also the last month. So it's a great time to set some intentions, but potentially with the focus of what are you going to wrap up? What are you letting go of? What are we like kind of clearing the decks and then starting to connect with potential, ready to kind of go full speed ahead as we come into the spring equinox and also Aries season, which is all about action. So again, because it's squaring Jupiter, could be overly dreamy. It could really like Jupiter exaggerates and expands wherever it is. So when it's in a tense aspect, we're more likely to get the more negative effects of Jupiter than the more positive, even though generally Jupiter is a benefic planet. So, what I would really encourage you to do is just watch for overly dreamy, unrealistic intentions. Draw on the mental clarity that from earlier in the week with Saturn and Mars. Let that kind of planning come a little bit earlier. Let the intention setting come earlier, and then you can reaffirm those at the new moon. But just be mindful of Jupiter kind of maybe making things a little bit hazy and confusing, or exaggerating things. Maybe it's not like the most beneficial. Great. Okay. So Saturday, the 1st of March, Mercury in Pisces is then going to be conjunct the North Node. So it's gone from like getting real with Saturn, then moving on to a nice sextile with Uranus for sudden clarity, and then it's going to connect with the North Node after this new moon. So we've set the intentions, then suddenly we're connecting with that. The North Node is the planet. Well, it's not a planet, it's a point in the sky. It's the head of the dragon, and it's generally like the direction that we're being pushed to move towards collectively, but also in your personal life. So it's where eclipses are happening, wherever the North Node is sitting in your chart, that's where eclipses are happening for that 18-month period. Eclipses bring sudden beginnings, sudden endings. They can bring complete 180s. They can bring unstable energy. It's very, very hard to predict what's going to happen in eclipse season, but it's usually bigness of some sort. So when a planet kind of makes a conjunction with the North Node, when we've got the North Node, that's where eclipses are happening. And that's almost like the direction of focus. It's almost like the North Star and the transiting chart, which is pointing you towards this is the area of life that we're being called to integrate and focus on and grow into. So again, with Mercury being conjunct that North Node, it might just be a moment of mental clarity, understanding what direction you're being pushed in and why, maybe. The North Node brings like a sense of hunger and insatiability. Like, I need to get more of this. It's not always necessarily healthy, but it's the direction that we're being pushed to explore at this time. It's an area of activity. So again, we've got the realism with Mercury conjunct Pisces. We've got the sudden moment of clarity. Then we've got the new moon, which is taking steps to set some intentions, but then afterwards we're almost getting even more clarity on what we're being pushed towards. So it is a week of clarity, but there's just potential at every turn for a little bit of confusion or a little bit of maybe over dreaming and not being real. So I guess the message this week is to just stay grounded and really pay attention, and also allow time for planning, intention setting, getting clear on where you're headed. It's a great week to recalibrate and also get creative as well. Like, just because there's potential for being overly dreamy and creative, actually energy that is creative and dreamy is really helpful for helping you realize potentials and directions that you're being pushed to move towards that maybe you never would have considered. But that creativity there is there, and there's less limits with Piscean energy. So that's why Piscean people can be great manifestors, because there's no limits to what they can dream. So in that respect, it's great, but it's almost about keeping things contained and just keeping yourself grounded, because you're going to need it this week. Okay, and then Sunday, the 2nd of March, we have Mercury in Pisces conjunct Neptune in Pisces, and this is where things are going to get real hazy and real confusing at 28 degrees of Pisces. So a great day for creative writing, poetry, any form of art, any form of artistic expression. Mercury is the planet of expression. Not a day for clarity, not a day for decision making. It's not a day to make commitments. Triple check the details. Just be careful. Like Neptune makes things hazy. Mercury doesn't like to be in Pisces anyway, because things aren't cut and dry, and it kind of struggles there. So it could be a day of confusion, however, incredibly powerful, incredibly creative, incredibly spiritual. So if you do have a spiritual practice, a great day for connection, just not necessarily the concrete steps to X. And then on the same day, we have Venus stationing retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries. So if you have any planets or points around 10 degrees of Aries, this is going to be hitting you more personally. And this really is a preparation for a journey into the underworld. So this is where Venus goes from an evening star where it's been really bright at one of the brightest points in its cycle, and it's going to disappear, and then it's going to reappear in the sky as a morning star. So in myth, Venus and Venus retrogrades were associated with the goddess Inanna, which is an ancient Sumerian myth, which I think is over like 5,000 or 6,000 years old. Don't quote me on that, but it's really old. And essentially, the goddess Inanna is called into the underworld by Hareshka girl, her sister. She then makes the descent. A whole bunch of stuff happens, and then she kind of comes out the other side. So it's almost like a hero's journey, but focused on more feminine energy. It's like a journey into the depths and the darkness, and then you kind of come out at the other side. So really, 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 really encourage you to have a look in your birth chart. Look at where you have 10 degrees of Aries up to about, I think, 24 degrees of Pisces. This retrograde is happening. What houses is this hitting? Because it will be significant for you. Particularly if you're a night chart baby. Venus is a benefic planet. So even though we are kind of having this journey of going into the underworld, it's a period of review. It's a period where this area of your life is undergoing a transformation of some sort. If you're a night chart baby, Venus is the most benefic planet in your chart. This doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. If anything, it could be quite beneficial. And it could be something, particularly if you're born with Venus retrograde, it's your natal signature. You're going to feel a lot more aligned and comfortable in Venus retrogrades. Day chart babies doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad for you. It's just that Jupiter is more benefic for you than Venus. So it might not be experienced as positive as maybe a night chart baby would experience a Venus retrograde. Just something to be aware of though. So Venus can sometimes, it brings up things in the past. So Venus repeats the same retrograde every 8 years, almost to the degree, almost to the day. So It moves about 2 degrees along every year. So, say, for example, last year it probably stationed retrograde about 12 degrees of Aries. This year it's stationing retrograde at 10 degrees of Aries, roughly on the same days, at the same time of year, all of that. So, the last time Venus went retrograde in Aries was 2017, the time before that, 2009, 2001, 1993. So if you've lived for that long, like reflect over those periods of time. Were there significant themes around that area of the house area that Venus is hitting for you, that came up that you can maybe thread together? Astrology is really helpful with hindsight because you can start to understand your personal patterning. People like planets, configurations, retrogrades, they hit people in such personal ways, but there's usually always a very, very, very significant pattern at certain times. So when you look at hindsight with what happened, what themes recurred, and when, that's when astrology can be so helpful because it can help you understand what this period of time is going to be about for you again. Um, Venus in Aries is fiery, independent, bold. Venus in Aries, like Venus is the planet of relationships. In Aries, the planet of independence. It doesn't like, it's not exactly like its home sign, if that makes sense. So Venus in Aries retrograde can be quite fiery. It can be a little bit focused on kind of fighting for what's right. Venus particularly in the collective, can represent things like women's rights, trans rights, LGBTQ rights. Gosh, that was a mouthful for me today. Lots of different things in that kind of area. So it could also bring themes up like that, as well as just like being a bit out there, being bold, being different, challenging the status quo is very, very Venus retrograde. So this will be a period of time where things are going to get kind of loud. Um, in not necessarily in a bad way, usually in a good way. But it's usually for the progress. Even if we tend to take steps back in Venus retrograde in the next cycle, it's usually a step forward. So just be mindful of that. This is going to be happening until the end of April. But again, coming back to how it's hitting you more personally, this will be a bit of a journey that's going to be happening over the next month or so. So or a couple of months. So definitely pay attention. As it starts, you'll start to see the themes become more prominent. So keep reflecting. We'll keep checking in on this every single week in these readings. And yeah, things will become a lot clearer. Definitely a period of time just to pay attention to. There's a lot of opportunity in Venus retrogrades. And yeah, just really owning what comes up and kind of putting energy into it, I feel like is the best way to kind of ride this out and get the most out of this period of time. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. I feel like it's been a long one this week. I don't actually know what time I started. But practices for this week, for those of you who are on the membership. So we've got a really nice 45-minute session of EFT and a little bit of journaling, entering into dream time, planting seeds of intention, beginning to water and nourish them. So very watery focused practice. Also very, very good for a new moon, which is why we've put that on there for everybody. So definitely be using those sessions when you're setting your intentions this month. It'll really help you with that Pisces energy as well. We also have another couple of practices that we're recommending this week. So we've got Flow and Nourish, which is a moving energy practice, all about connecting with the water element, balancing winter energy, balancing those kidney and bladder meridians. This is the last opportunity now to get those meridians in place, get them into balance and in their optimal state. Because as we step into towards the equinox, we're then going to move into Earth, which is stomach and spleen, I think. And then we're going to move into the spring season, which is all about liver and gallbladder. So each phase of the cycle feeds the next. If you're strong in these kidney and bladder energy meridians now, then it's going to feed the rest of the cycle. So it's a really good opportunity to just clean up, get as many practices as you can in just for these last few weeks of the winter. So we can really, like, that'll help you shift stagnation, prepare your body ready. So when the time comes at the equinox, we can actually jump off the starting blocks and have the energy to sustain it. A couple of other recommended practices in there for you guys this week, continuing with the work we've been doing on embodying characters as well. So definitely a bit of a prompt just to keep going with that daily practice in order to kind of flesh yourself out a little bit more and just really embodying and ingraining those characters we've been working on for the whole month since the new moon coaching call. And then also just some lovely journal prompts, just kind of reflecting on the last trimester of winter and also setting some intentions of how you're going to wrap things up as we step into, as we move towards the equinox as well. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. Thank you guys for joining me for another update. And yeah, we'll be back here next week with more of the same. Lots of love.